Welcome to Todd Talks. Tonight my subject is one of my favorite types of signs, light bulb signs, which is also the pre-neon era. Now, just for perspective's sake, let's talk about the various eras of electric signs. That light bulb era I talk about was really the first electric signs. That period is around 1900 to 1925 or so. The next period is the neon period. Neon was introduced to the US in around the mid-1920s and continued, at least the heyday of neon continued probably up until the mid-60s or so. The third period I call the plastic era, which is probably a misnomer. I should probably talk about the light source for plastic signs, and those were primarily fluorescent light bulbs. So you might call that third period the fluorescent light period. And that is basically late 40s up until, let's say, maybe the early 80s. Now, the period afterward is what I might call the modern period. That was the advent of LEDs, which was more in the mid to late 80s. We don't really cover that period here at the museum. We're a historical museum, so we really talk about light bulb signs, neon signs, and plastic signs, or fluorescent signs. Now, I told you that's my favorite period of time, of types of signs. My house is 1895, so I really like that turn of the century period. So let's look at what we call our timeline history of signs and letters. We've got a couple early samples of light bulb signs here. This W here is actually from a theater in Seattle, Washington. And these letters, I were told, was about 1910. So what this letter was, it was actually a changeable letter. This would go on what we call the reader board, that part of a sign, like maybe a motel sign, where they say no vacancy or whatever, but they can change the letters. So this was actually one of the changeable letters. I date this till around 1910. Now, if you look a little bit to the left, there's this big sign with light bulbs. I want to caution you, when I say light bulb signs, there are many different light bulb signs, and the use of light bulbs in illuminating signs continued well after the light bulb period. But particularly in the 50s, you see a lot of arrows with light bulbs on it that are flashing or chasing, like for a drive-in movie, an auto car lot, that kind of thing. Those, yes, those are also incandescent light bulbs, but when we talk about the light bulb period, again, 1900 to mid-20s, that was the sole source of illumination. Neon wasn't around yet, certainly fluorescent wasn't around yet. Now you got to think about what it's like when the light bulb was introduced at the turn of the century. Prior to that, the only illumination, once it got dark, were maybe oil lamps, or there were a few gas lamps. When the light bulb was introduced for lighting up rooms or storefronts, it was a game changer. It made commerce able to happen at night. So if you think about a storefront with light bulbs inside lighting up the windows, think of the dramatic effect of having an electric sign also out there on the facade of the storefront, lighting up that business. And again, it was a real game changer for commerce in America, because it could continue after dark. So this light bulb, the light bulbs in this are actually from the late 1940s. This is more into that neon period. These are also changeable letters. These were made by a company in Chicago called White Wave, who specialized in theaters. One of the things that we've done here, when we talk about those three different periods of illumination, three different periods of electric signs, we've highlighted those in this aisleway right here. And so we start off again with the pre-neon or light bulb era. And all of these signs here are part of that early period, 1900 to mid-20s, late 20s, and use the light bulb for illumination. Now, there were two ways to light up signs. The light bulb, the incandescent light bulb, could be on the outside of the sign, or it could be on the inside of the sign. And I'm going to show you some of the different forms that might take. So let's first talk about light bulb signs where the light bulbs are inside the sign. You look at this sign here. These letters are actually what are kind of like embossed glass letters, which we call opal glass. And I'm going to take you back to the letter wall and show you some examples of the opal glass letters. Let's go back real quick and look at the letter wall. So right below the sign with the exposed light bulbs letters, this one again from the late 1940s, early 50s, made by Whiteway, are these letters right here. These are what we call opal glass letters. And these were in signs that were electric signs. The light bulbs were actually inside the sign cabinet, and these are translucent glass where the light would show through the letters. Again, we call these opal glass letters. Now, they don't make a whole lot of sense until I show you some actual opal glass letter signs that incorporate these letters. So let's go over and take a look at the opal glass letter signs. So here we are with an opal glass letter sign. Imagine those glass panels, those embossed glass letters, those rectangular panels. Imagine them being used in this sign right here. So what they would do is in the sign cabinet, they would cut the letter out, the shape of the letter, obviously in this case a K, and they would push those embossed glass panels through from the inside. There would be a clip on the top and a clip on the bottom inside the cabinet, holding that glass panel flush against the inside of the sign face. And then again, there would be incandescent light bulbs inside illuminating these letters. So this is one form of light bulb sign where the light bulbs are inside the sign. We've got this one here. We've got the gold sign, good gold sign. We've got this one right here, the Anthony Red Tone. All three of these signs were made by a company called FlexLume in Buffalo. Now FlexLume and another company in Indiana went back and forth fighting over the patent for opal glass letter signs. The other company was called Opalite, and they made opalescent glass letters. So this patent war went back and forth. First Opalite won, and then FlexLume won. In the end, FlexLume won. But by that time, neon had been introduced, so it was almost a moot point because neon kind of knocked out early light bulb signs. So let's look at this sign here. This is another type of sign where the light bulbs are inside the sign. These are little glass, what I call buttons. If I can get one out here for you. You take it out, and it's kind of like a mushroom shape. If you look at it, it's got the half round dome with the stem on the back. Now these are threaded. So what they would do is punch a hole in the sign cabinet and screw these in. And again, these are glass, so they're translucent. The light bulbs inside the sign would shine through these. Now, you won't be able to read it, but I can tell you what it says on the rim of the glass. It says patented July 26, 1910. Now, by looking at old issues of Signs of Times magazines, I found ads for these and discovered that these were made by a company called American Sign in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So they had a patent for these. So as you can see, I just screw this back in. Again, it lights up. So this is another form of light bulbs inside the sign. If you look at this globe up here, this Westinghouse globe, you often see these globes in reverse on the top of gas pumps, but they were also used for signs outside of the store, hanging in an installation like this. Then you've got the sign at the top, again another light bulb sign where the light bulbs are inside the sign. That glass is translucent and then reverse painted, meaning it was painted on the inside of the glass and the light shines through it. Okay? So again, these are all samples of light bulb signs where the light bulbs are inside the sign. Let's take a look at a sign where the light bulbs are on the outside of the sign. This would be typical of that. This sign, D of A. D of A was Daughters of America, not to be confused with Daughters of the American Revolution. This sign was actually found in Cincinnati. Daughters of America was a turn-of-the-century organization which was very Christian-based and anti-foreigner. So it has a little bit of political nuance with some of the things that are going on today. This sign was actually on a building in downtown Cincinnati on Central Parkway. The building was being demolished. The electrician working on the project saw the sign, asked the contractor, demolition contractor, what they were going to do with it. They were just going to scrap it. So he asked him if he could have it, and he took it home with him and stored it in his garage in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Cincinnati. And it was there for probably 25, 30 years before he found out about the museum. He sent us a picture of it. He asked us if we wanted it, and we said, boy, that's a beautiful sign. I love the pictorial work here on the hands right there. He said, the sign's all yours. I'd love for you to have it, plus I want to get it out of my garage. It's obviously a pretty big sign. So this is an exposed light bulb sign. We've got another sign up here, this drug sign, obviously exposed light bulbs. Now this sign was made by a company called Federal Sign Company, which was founded in 1901. This is what we call a semi-production sign, because Federal Sign was one of the first companies to make components for sign, which they made in mass quantity, and then could customize the sign. Let me explain what I mean in this particular sign. This cabinet, the white kind of frame, was mass produced, and then they made stock panels that said drugs, and they could bolt that in there. They also had stock panels that would say barbershop or some other type of business that would be repetitive. So if you look up in the top, you can see in the lower left-hand corner it says Federal Sign Systems Electric, and it's got a patent on it. We happen to have a catalog from Federal Sign dated about 1903, and this sign, this type of sign is actually pictured in that cabinet. We've got, not all of our signs are on display. We've got a number of signs in our boneyard, in our warehouse behind the existing museum. So I pulled one of these signs out that people don't get to see and brought this up just for this presentation. So we saw the drug sign. This is another type of Federal sign. What I was talking about is they made stock components and put those together to make what appeared to be custom signs. If you look at this closely, this T panel, this is a panel, this is a panel, this is a panel, this is a panel. So these are made in quantities, and they just put it together to spell meat. That formed the main basis of the sign. Then they added this little stock panel at right and left to form a border around the sign. This little ornamentation right here, this ornamentation on the top, this ornamentation on the bottom, or on the left. These were stock panels as well, they could bolt in. Obviously they made the model custom just for this sign. And if you look at the bottom, it's got another custom panel, mark it, and it repeats the three sections that are on the top. The little border work here, border work there, and the border work there. This is another light bulb sign made by Federal. Federal was really, again, the first company to mass produce sign components to make signs. While we're here, I've got another sign that we pulled out of the back that people don't usually get to see. This sign is probably easily 1910. It's no later than 1920. Maybe hard to read on the camera, but it says vaudeville. Interesting part about this sign to me, well, one of the most interesting parts of the sign is this cabinet, the box we call a sign cabinet, is actually wood construction. So it's pretty unusual to find a electric sign that begins as a wood sign cabinet. So what they did is they made the wood cabinet, they added this little wood borders, and these letters here, these are what we call open channel letters, okay? So the channel or the opening of the letter is on the top, and they just put the light bulbs in. The background of the sign happens to be smalts, which we'll talk about in another talks later. The sign's in pretty rough shape, but it obviously was outdoors. We will restore this sign to make it structurally sound, but leave the rest of the sign as is. If you come down here, and see the scroll work at the bottom. This is all cast metal. There's one on each corner of the sign. Pretty neat sign, pretty rare sign. The sign is 100 years old and has survived all these for a century or more. Coming back over here, let's take a look at some more light bulb signs. You look up here at the Dolly Madison sign. We've got two different versions of the sign: an illuminated or a non-illuminated sign here on the right, obviously just painted tin, and then the same exact design here on the left. That is again opal glass letters. This sign is what I would call a transition sign, because it's opal glass letters, but if you open up the sign and look at the illumination, it's actually neon tubing. So I'm wondering about this sign, because it's opal glass, it probably would originally have been illuminated with light bulbs, as we've been talking about in this talk. But at some point, it was retrofitted for neon. Either that, or the sign was fabricated right at the edge or the overlap between the light bulb period and the neon period, which would put it mid to late 20s. Okay. Speaking of the overlap of neon and the neon period and the light bulb period, let's take a look at this boot sign right here. We found this in Brooklyn, New York. Come on the other side first. Even though we're talking about light bulb signs, you'll see that the sign is illuminated on this side with neon. When we acquired the sign, it had the neon tubing in it. But as we looked at it a little closer, it became apparent that the neon had been retrofitted to the sign. So we looked at it a little closer, realized that this sign had originally been a light bulb sign. So it's kind of a lesson in how a sign could be retrofitted. What we did is we took the other side of the sign and restored it back to how it was originally with the light bulbs. So this is a great example of how an existing technology might be replaced with a new technology, in this case lighting, when that new light source became available. This sign probably weighs 300, maybe 400 pounds. It's a good example of what we call a trade sign. Trade signs being signs that are in the shape of a symbol, where the symbol represents that the product or business, the product or service offered by the business. In this case, a boot. Regal was a pretty well-known boot company. Take a look around the corner. Got a few more light bulb signs. Up the top here is a stained glass sign, where the face of the sign is actually stained glass. Obviously, stained glass is translucent. So this is where this has light bulbs inside it, lighting up the translucent stained glass. You've all seen stained glass windows in a church, for example, and that really lights up when the sun's behind it. So here they added a little bit more with the light bulb presence. These two signs are also light bulb signs. They kind of have the look of the sign, the Kelly Springfield truck sign on the other side. Or I'm sorry, they kind of have the look of the Kelly Springfield tire sign we saw with the buttons, as I call them, the glass buttons. But if you get up close to the sign, what you'll see is instead of glass buttons, it's got little tabs punched in the sign and bent inward. There are light bulbs inside the sign. The light hits these tabs and reflects outward. This is a technique that was originated by a company called McSavity Company out of Springfield, Ohio. They're the only company that made these signs. There's very little information about this company. I was able to find a McSavity catalog on eBay. I think I paid $150 or $200 for the catalog just because I could not find any information about the company. Then we have another light bulb sign. We talked about FlexLume as kind of being a leading sign company with their opal glass letters. This sign is also a FlexLume sign. You see down here in the lower right, it says patented July 6, 1909, Buffalo Sign Company, or I'm sorry, FlexLume Sign Company, Buffalo, New York. This sign is very much like the opal glass letters, but it's a different letter. Instead of being a colored glass, a white glass, or blue glass, or green glass, it's actually clear glass, and it's got the pattern that's pretty much like the pattern of you can see in bathroom windows in the 30s and 40s. You may have an old house that has those same windows, kind of a stamp pattern on it. It also has a small background, like we talked about that over on the vaudeville sign. The interesting part about this sign, changing light bulbs is always an issue. To make it easy, what they actually did on this sign is they hinged each letter. And if I open it up, you can see the light bulb inside. And you're probably wondering what these little screens are. These are what you might call baffles. What they do is they diffuse the light. If these were not here, if you look at the letter from the outside, you'd see what we call a hot spot. It would kind of be that glowing circle in the middle of the letter, which was the light bulb on the other side. By putting the baffles in, it kind of spreads the light out and therefore illuminates the letter much more evenly. You don't have that hot spot effect. Now, we actually have a whole window about FlexLume signs with a lot of artifacts from FlexLume Sign Company. I want to show you something in that window. When you look at the D of A sign, you'll see colored light bulbs. This is a little poetic license we took. 1910, there weren't really colored light bulbs. All there were clear light bulbs. And I'll show you something here in the FlexLume booth, or FlexLume exhibit. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to get the camera down here. But there's these three like little caps. There's kind of an amber one, a red one, and a white one. These caps were put over top of clear light bulbs to create the colors. Okay, these are not made by FlexLume. They were made by a company called Ricoh. But this was the way to get a clear light bulb and make it look colored. Now, why did they make colored light bulbs to begin with? I don't know that, but I do know that they made these caps. Just as a side issue, if you look at this Acapulco sign, which is much later, it's a 50s sign. I told you that not all light bulb signs were in that light bulb period, 1900 to 1925. Very typical to have light bulb casing around a panel like this. But those panels actually have plastic caps, much like the glass caps we just saw in the FlexLume window. Okay. Interesting that they didn't use colored light bulbs. It's really the only sign I've ever seen with the plastic caps on it. But I thought I'd point that out now that we were talking about the glass caps. One more thing here in the FlexLume window, thought I'd show you. We were talking about the opal glass letters. These metal castings, opal glass letters are actually slump molded, where you take a flat piece of glass, put it on a mold, the glass gets hot, you put it in a kiln, same kind of kiln that Potter would use. The glass gets soft, it starts to slump down over the form of the mold. And if you look at this T mold, if you come in here close and look at the T mold, I'm not sure you'll be able to see this, there are little holes punched in the mold, and if you look at the Old English G to the left, there's some little holes punched in the mold. What those actually have a purpose. As the glass gets soft and slumps down over the form of the mold, it would kind of puddle, but they had a vacuum system in the kiln that would suck that soft glass around the mold and make it tight, so it would be a tight impression on that mold. If you think about some of the signs we've seen, the opal glass letter signs, if the glass is not tight around the mold, what happens is there's kind of where the embossing comes down, hits the flat part of the glass, there's kind of a rounding right there instead of almost like a 90-degree angle, and that glass letter pushed from the inside can't be flush against the face. There were some number of people trying to remake opal glass letters, and one of the critical things they're trying to achieve is get that right angle from the embossed section and the flat part. You might call that the flange of the glass. That's a very critical part of making an opal glass letter. Thus the vacuum system sucking that glass tight around the mold. Okay. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. If we're going to go back to that letter wall, we talked about the Regal boot and how that was originally a light bulb sign and then was retrofitted later with neon. So we're talking about how light bulbs kind of, evolved into neon. That's a clear-cut separation between light bulbs and neon. But I want to show you something that FlexLume did. I mentioned that when FlexLume, when neon was introduced, FlexLume's technology of making opal glass letters was kind of knocked out of the box because neon was much more flexible. It had more colors. It could be bent in any type of shape. So what FlexLume tried to do is make an opal letter that would also incorporate the new technology of neon. I'm going to show you that example over here. If we come back to our letter wall with all the opal glass letters, if you look at this kind of chrome yellow letter, this is actually an A and should be turned upright. It's a mistake on my part. But this was an opal glass letter that FlexLume was experimenting with. But if you look, there's holes here for the electrodes that are inherent to neon. What they were trying to do is make an opal glass letter that would incorporate neon. They were trying to bridge that gap into the neon era. So that's what this was. Now, when I was talking to Patty Rao, the patriarch of neon, Patty Rao passed away a couple years ago, but he was an excellent source of information about opal glass letters. He told me that FlexLume only made about 4 or 5 signs using this technology where they were trying to bridge the gap into the neon era. Once neon hit, FlexLume pretty much moved into the neon era, making neon neon signs and kind of abandon the opal glass. We have another sample of a light bulb sign, again internally illuminated. I have to admit that this is a mystery sign to me. If you look at these panels, they're pretty much like the opal glass letters that we're going to talk about, we just talked about, but they're actually kind of like these panels right here, but these actually slide up and down. Okay, they come out. Now you could say, oh yeah, it was a changeable letter sign. But if you think about it, there's only 5 characters on here. What if you have 6? What if you have 4? So I don't think this sign was made to be a changeable letter sign. So why are the panels, why do they go to all this trouble of making this little ridge on here and making this return right here where this kind of slides into this frame like that? Why would they do that? Well, to change the light bulbs, to make the light bulbs easy to change? No, I don't think so. Because normally what they would do to change the light bulbs is they would cut a hole in the top of the cabinet and simply make a piece of sheet metal, flat sheet metal, put that over and screw that down in the 4 corners. Much easier to fabricate than go into all this trouble. So I'm going to have to say this is a mystery sign that I don't understand, and we do like mysteries here. It will remain a mystery to us. We had talked a little bit about reverse painted light bulb signs. We had the Westinghouse globe out in the area that highlights pre-neon or light bulb signs. There was also the kind of the dry cleaning sign that was hanging from above. This Cotter's beer is another example of reverse glass illuminated sign. This glass face is reverse glass painted, light bulbs inside, but you'll see it has a neon border on it. This is another one of those signs that kind of bridges that gap between the light bulb era and the neon era. It incorporates a mainstay of light bulb signs by being internally illuminated, reverse painted glass, but then they added in the neon border. That again puts this sign right on the cusp of the end of neon, or the end of the mainstream neon era, light bulb era, and the start of the neon era, somewhere around late 20s, maybe early 30s at the most. We've got another one here with the sights beer nail. Again, reverse painted glass. One interesting sign that I thought I'd talk about since we're talking about light bulb signs. We go here to this General Electric sign. This sign has much of that kind of mid-century modern look. It's kind of, I would call this mid to late 30s is what I would guess by the design of it. What you can see is the glass is heavily stained on the inside. That's probably dirt and rust that washed off the cabinet and stained the glass face. But this has light bulbs inside it. The cabinet is actually porcelain enamel. Now come over and look at the other side of the sign. Just thought I'd make note of this. When we acquired this sign, it was cracked on this side. Both the GE circle and the other panel, 10 Best Home Servants, was cracked. We had done some projects with the Museum of Neon Art, and we don't like to restore signs, maybe, or repaint signs, but in this case, it made a lot of sense because the glass was actually cracked. So what we did is we took a pattern off the other side of the sign. There was enough there we could make a pattern, and we reverse screen printed on the glass and recreated these 2 faces so they were in perfect condition. Again, not something we normally do, but otherwise this was all broken, and so it made sense to keep one original side and remake the other side. Very unusual sign. I've not seen this before. You're probably going to wonder, what's the deal with the 10 Best Home Servants? And what I think they were alluding to is 10 types of appliances that General Electric made. Let's say an iron, a washer, a dryer, a stove, a refrigerator, keep on going, okay? The 10 best serves. That's what I've been asked that before. I thought about it. I think that's what that means. So kind of neat. Thank you for hearing our Todd Talks on light bulb signs. There'll be more coming in the future. Stay tuned.